Hey, it's TDA, and today you're in luck if you like extremely organized layouts, because that's what I defaulted into making after my gazillionth asteroid again ran out of resources, and I had to reallocate all my production lines to all my different factories sitting all over the place in order to get things back up and running. So if you want to be extremely organized and you want to make your life as easy as possible and not waste any time and resources, then you are going to definitely want to watch this till the end. Now, I would actually recommend that you do this from the beginning of the game. However, in order to do that, you do need to kind of plan ahead, because what you want is a lot of open space. Now, initially, you tend to start out between 3 different types of asteroids, so whatever location you pick for your initial factory, take into consideration that the bauxite asteroid that you're going to be placed next to is going to be the first asteroid to run out, so that you can build over later on. Other than that, just make sure that you have a little bit of building space so you can extend your building once you get going. In order to make an efficient design for your space station, you should take into consideration how you're actually going to be transporting stuff to that, because you are going to have mining colonies where you're going to be exporting the stuff from to your main base, because we are going to make one single main base. Now, the layout I'm going to be working with is the vessel design you see over here. It's slightly different compared to what I've been showing in the previous episodes, because I did actually add 2 more cargo boxes on each side. For the main reason is that you can actually then use 4 inserters at the same time to get stuff in here, rather than just 2 that I had before. It just makes things everything a little bit faster. Now, there is a downside to this design, and that's because everything is going to be stacking up in this last cargo hold in the end over here. Once this one is full, it's going to stack up over here, and so on. So in order for the exporting to actually be efficient, you kind of need all of these 4 cargo holds to be completely empty. Now, it's not the biggest thing in the world, honestly, but it is something to keep in mind. If you want to be super efficient, you actually want this entire thing to be filled up before you start exporting. But again, it's completely up to you whether or not you care about that, because honestly, getting your ratios perfect and your production lines non-stop producing isn't the biggest thing in this game. Now, for those of you that didn't see this design before, this little connector over here is actually going to draw some of the resources from whatever you're exporting to be burned as fuel. Now, if you're exporting something very valuable, that might hurt a little bit, but honestly, typically those things burn for a very long time as well, so it shouldn't be the biggest deal in the world, and it's only going to be drawing a little bit of power. But you do want to make sure that you don't have your ships driving up and down more than they need to. The first part of your base that you want to start constructing is a base that is going to be producing plasma engines, because you're going to need those juicy little mining drones. That also means that in order to produce this, you're going to need low density structures, so you'll need a ship to get that stuff in here, or if you're at the very beginning of the game, just pretty much any way of getting that in here, which includes the insertables. You can just make a little bit of a string for that. Now, assuming you landed over here, you can just use these insertables. Just make sure that you only leave one gap in between and that you place the insertable bot on that specific block. And this is the most optimal way to get stuff from your ship into your base. Now, you can play around with the actual designs. I like making these symmetric designs, but honestly, you can make these as complicated as you want. However, keep in mind that there's only so much input that you are going to be able to supply it, so if you overdo it, you're not going to be able to have these things all function at the same time anyway, so you want to keep things relatively small to begin with. Now, as you can see, we are going to be drawing in the low density structures over here. These are going to be connected and going to go through this initial building into this one as well, and then we're exporting the engines over here, and these will set in these blocks over here. And again, you can see the blocks on the outside are exactly the same layout as on the inside, so if I have another ship approaching here for whatever reason, I can use the exact same ship design once again. However, you don't necessarily need to connect everything by ships. As much as you can, you should actually try to avoid that. So what I've done over here is I made a very nice layout over here that is going to produce both the mining vessels as well as the research bots, as well as some bats. So 3 different types of ships, but I actually have 2 of them making the mining bots, because you need so many of those. And then by connecting this up once again with some inserters, you basically have an interrupted production line over here. Now, you are going to need some of these circuit boards over here as well, so you are going to need to bring those in from a separate ship. But this entire facility is then very easy to organize, keep track of, as well as make sure that you have all your initial ships up and running. Basically, as soon as you completed this, you already completed the early game. Then from this point on, all you need to do is use the exact same logic to add some more items to your actual factory. So over here you can see I added in the robotics. Now, because robotics are very cheap to make, I actually added in a couple more assemblers to make those. And as you can see, you do need quite a bit of power for that. Don't overdo the power. I mean, if you're going to use antimatter, for example, like I am, you don't actually need these last pieces, even though you could fit them in. So just try to optimize the things and don't put any more building blocks in here than you need, because that's just wasting resources. Now, of course, this is a very simple layout, but it does allow you to make a very nice structured factory if you could just continue along the same line of thought. Because let's say things get a little bit more complicated, like with the fabricators over here. Now, of course, I can just connect these to the robotics units that we have over here, but then I'm also going to need to bring in some low density structures in order to actually have the second type of resources that this needs. Now, as you can see, I am using the exact same layout again with those 4 blocks. So if I would want to connect a hauler to this, I could. You could just have it deliver it like so, but I'm actually going to do this slightly different. I've actually made a couple of these building blocks that basically function like belts. So over here in the corner, nothing is happening other than the fact that I am bringing in the raw resources, so the low density structures over here. I'm transporting those into this, basically into this belt over here. That's the only thing this is doing. And then I'm transporting those into this corner piece over here. And then I'm transporting that over here. Now, again, you can just use a ship to fly by here and deposit these directly. But what I like about this is that this becomes extremely organized. As you can see, I have all these ships lining up, and it's really easy to tell what is coming in where. This ship is the only exception to the rule so far. And if any ship is just stuck or not doing, all I have to do is just check my logistics, run past these ships, and see what is happening or what is not happening. Of course, you also need to make sure that your supply side is organized in the exact same manner. So over here you see my by now favorite mining setup with 8 of these mining stations connected to a couple of these atomic printers in order to make the base materials, and then exporting whatever they are producing over here into these boxes. So again, 4 boxes in a row, so you can easily set up a landing zone attached to that and have your ships fly in, collect these, and then fly out. Now, typically I would recommend that your ships wait at least for about 2 minutes, more or less, in order to collect some stuff that will allow them to collect a lot of resources and then just fly back and wait until they empty their inventory. Here you can see everything in action, and I did add another inserter bot over here into the middle to draw some of the overflow that might happen from this top line into the bottom line. Because remember, these 2 boxes are going to be the last ones to empty, so this bottom half of the production line is actually going to be getting less resources than the stuff on top. So that might mean that there's actually an overflow here, and this little inserter bot is going to help address a little bit of that. Alternatively, what you could also do is just disconnect this, and wherever that is going to be convenient, add in another connector like this. Of course, you do need to make sure you set the filters appropriately. And then if there's any overflow over here, it's going to automatically distribute this down. Now, of course, if you really want to make this efficient, then you should add in one of these junction boxes over here. Something like this, and then the resources are going to be split even more. Now, this is really min-maxing stuff. You don't really need to worry about this at all in my experience, because this game is not really about trying to have these perfect ratios, non-stop producing production lines. You actually don't need that much production of anything except for stuff that is actually involved in making vessels. But other than that, you can just take your time and just make a pretty layout rather than a super efficient layout. However, I do think this layout in particular is pretty efficient. As you can see, I have all my ships, all my docking ports in a nice little row over here. I'm making lasers here as well. I used another one of these corner pieces, and by doing so you can really see the repetition and structure in your base starting to ramp up as you create more and more. Now, why these ships actually do this whole 270-degree turn once they arrive, I don't know, but yeah, all in all, it looks pretty amazing when these ships actually start and stop. This is also a pretty good example of why I think you should set your ships to actually empty their inventory before they grab another bunch of resources. Because over here, for example, the lasers, because I actually didn't connect the other production lines up just yet, as you can see, these boxes are actually completely full, but there is some resources left in this ship. So this ship is still waiting for these resources to actually be used before it's again going to fly back and pick up some new stuff. Now, why is this so awesome? This means that you can actually more easily have multiple ships using the same mining port, and you also don't waste any resources being burned by unnecessary trips back and forth. Now, if you want to be super efficient, although it's not necessarily the quickest way to get things going, you could also just have it wait until its inventory is completely full before it actually flies back. The downside of that is that means that you're going to be waiting for thousands of units to be produced, unless of course you use middle mouse button to lock some of these slots up. But if you do that, then you might as well just have it stick around there for maybe 1 or 2 minutes and then fly back. So either way, I don't think you want to wait for its inventory to be completely full. You set it to a set time limit, and then just have it wait until it actually delivered all of those units to wherever it is going. Once you reach the more complicated parts of the game, for example, I have the mass fuel and production over here, just add in a new type of structure, or a new set of structures, I should say, in order to get all the materials you need. So robotics over here, we have medium density structures coming in over here for the second part of the recipe. Now, because this is a very slow recipe, I did actually include 8 assemblers making these things. And just because I could, I add in some singularity power stations in order to power all of this. These are just drawing from the belt. Now, this one is the one I used to kickstart with some low density structures. But for example, over here, you can see I'm actually using the robotic parts that I'm producing over here in order to actually get the power going. So these you can use throughout your entire station if you want, and you can actually connect your stations to each other if you want to make use of that. So let me show you what I mean. This is only going to be of limited use, but if you are overproducing power somewhere, like I'm overproducing power in this particular station, then you can actually use the little gap in between your cargo holds to export the power using a power transmitter and a power receiver from one station core to the next. Now, you don't want to do this in any place that a vessel is going to be landing, so not to use it over here, for example, because things are going to get burned down really quickly if you place anything in between, as you can see. But other than that, this is a very cool thing to do. So you could actually set up a central power station somewhere that's producing a lot of power, and then use these power transmitters to easily connect all of your different stations to each other by doing something similar to this. And to demonstrate what I've meant is doing something like this. So you can see I'm connecting different parts of my station everywhere with these power transceivers. So all this overflow of power, if any part of my production facility is not using its power, it's going to be used somewhere else. Now, of course, remember that this power is only going to flow in one particular direction. So it's not going to be perfectly distributing your power across everything unless you do it both ways, then it will. But it's just something, again, you can play around with. Now, do you need to worry about this? No. Is it very cool to do so? Yes. If you really want to take advantage of this, you should definitely do so by using what I call organic power. So I have a comet catcher over here. Now, of course, this is a little bit further into the technology tree already. A comet catcher over here and a comet harvester over here. A couple of these singularity power stations connected to a station core. These are all just running on ice. Well, they will be running on ice as soon as the kickstarted circuit boards are going to be running out. And I use the power transmitter. These have a huge range that will just connect. I'm not actually sure they have a maximum range. They probably do, but it's really long at least. So you can see I actually connected that up to a station over here. This station in particular is actually already producing the singularity matrix. I think that's what it's called, singularity fields, apologies. And these need 3 different types of resources, so I do have another ship connected to this. Keep in mind that you do not want your ship to land in between these lines, so this is why this is sticking out a little bit. And I am actually using the fabricators that I'm making all the way up here. So I've used a little bit of a corner piece, extended corner piece over here with some cargo vessels in order to transport everything from A to B. Now, I don't know about you, but this is starting to look like an extremely organized base. It's really easy to find all your stuff. It's really easy to collect all of your stuff. And this is already halfway down the technology tree. I'm actually using organics. Now again, keep in mind that stuff can actually get destroyed in this little zone of death, or zone of ouch, I think someone in the comments called it, which is hilarious, so I'm going to stick with that. Let's call it the zone of ouch. But all in all, this is an extremely organized way to set things up. Now, there are going to be some parts that are a little bit harder to organize. So, for example, over here, I am making the second tier of planetary research bots, or I'm producing the planetary research bots, which are made from the remnants of asteroid research bots. And honestly, this is really bugging me because I hate this recipe. Why not just make the research bots straight up and first have to construct one, deconstruct it, and then make the next tier? Doesn't really make sense to me. So I hope this maybe changes somewhere in the future. I don't know. It's a little bit of a messy type of thing to make. So what I've actually done over here is I'm just manually dropping those things in. Not necessarily the easiest way to do things, but honestly, you can fill up 800 of every resource in these boxes, and you can stack up more boxes if you want. So it's not the biggest thing to do. You do need to keep an eye on the fact that you might not be actually producing any science if these actually stop producing like they have for me now, because I actually ran out of plasma engines. It's completely up to you whether or not you want to bother with that, but it's in my opinion just a very easy way to do this if you want to stay organized. But of course you could also set up a completely dedicated production line to all of that stuff and do it like that. Again, completely up to you. Let me know in the comments, do you think this is an organized way? Do you have a better way to set these things up? Because honestly, I've been iterating a little bit on my own base design. I did notice that if you actually change your base design midway through the game, you get all of these piles of resources just laying around, which is really annoying. There's not really any easy way to pick things up, and because you have so many different buildings, your inventory clutters up really quick. It just becomes a little bit of a chore to actually clean everything up. So I'm not a huge fan of that. So making sure you start out with an organized base from the get-go, I think will save you not a lot of, only a lot of time, but also a lot of redesigning headaches. And if worst things come to pass and you need to reallocate the location of your base, you can still do that, because of course it's really easy to just move all of these individual pieces if you have to. Now, I do hope you enjoyed this one. If you're still here, you're awesome, and I do hope to catch you in the next one.